Hello, and welcome to the Positunity Podcast. Life's a journey, own yours. Thank you for joining. Whether it is rejoining or this is your first time, thank you. If this is your first time joining, make sure to follow the podcast on your favorite platform so you are alerted to episodes as soon as they become available. Please like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and just since the relaunch on YouTube for the video version. You can also send an email to positunitynow@gmail.com, as well as online. Visit the website at positunity.biz, net, and org. All right, so what to talk about today? First, I want to start with a positunity that happened a couple of weeks ago in my own life. Well, two really. They're connected to each other, but along the same vein. And at first glance, probably not positives. Why? They involve money, and me losing it. Money, that is. I have a lot of side hustles that include this podcast, but are certainly not limited to it. A couple of those side hustles ended over the last couple of weeks. I know it doesn't sound like a good thing, but it is for a few reasons. One of these projects I terminated, and one was terminated for me. But ultimately, while it may mean less money for me in the near term, it means more time for other projects, like this one. And more importantly, in the big picture, more time and focus for me. Still, losing potential income may sound like the misfortune outweighs the good, so let me elaborate. Both of these projects were things that I have been involved with for years. And in order to remain vague, I will just say that each was longer than 5 years, and we will leave it at that. The relationships connected with these projects has not ended, but I have suspicions that they will, or may. The reason the loss of income is actually a net positive, a positunity in my eyes, is these were both relationships where my worth was not recognized, appreciated, or properly compensated. Ergo, the loss was not what it could or should have been. Both of these relationships were entered at a financially vulnerable time in my life. They came from a time before and honestly helped carry me through COVID financially. See, positive. To these anonymous projects, I want to say thank you for the projects. And that is the end of my gratitude here for those projects. One of these projects has slowly dwindled over the intervening years to the point that I even told my partner recently, I know this thing can and probably will end any day. So I was mentally and emotionally prepared, even though the actual termination and the day was a surprise. It was a mystery until last week. But again, I was emotionally prepared ahead of time. The second one I had hoped would turn into something bigger from the onset 5-ish years ago. It came about because of a volunteer opportunity at the time when I needed and wanted quite literally anything to do. Thus the volunteer. I went to the original commitment knowing that I was not getting paid. Hindsight being 2020, when the project ended and people were getting paid out, I truly thought, even expected, I might get a token of appreciation, no matter how minuscule, considering the hours and months that I spent on the project. I was there from the beginning of the project, helped it get off the ground, and remained until the very last day when the offices were being cleared out and everyone, save 8 of us, were still helping. Everyone else had left. It never came. It did not turn into the bigger project or job opportunity I had hoped either. Positunity where? It did result in several connections that turned out to be beneficial, both personally and in friendships. I still maintain today, and financially. See, there's the tie-in. One of these financial relationships remained a steady, albeit irregular, source of additional income. When the call came, if I was available for work, I took it. Every time. Over the years, that relationship became mutually beneficial because I knew their style and they knew mine. We were able to connect quickly, get the details out of the way, and finalize the project to satisfaction on both ends. It was also beneficial in that we learned each other's communication styles and feelings weren't hurt getting down to the nitty-gritty. It was a means to an end that also got us to a positive outcome. That said, again, hindsight here, another opportunity with this company arose recently, and my first reaction was to take it. I had the spare time and the income would be nice. It also came up before that other project ended. As I started, however, I had another thought as demands began to rise from the parties involved. Why am I doing this? This is not my day job. It is not what pays the bills. And actually, this is their MO. I am their fallback, for lack of a better term. They needed something outside the scope of their team, employees, and company, whatever that might be. And I only received a request when they were in this type of a bind. Again, I'm trying to remain vague here. But the request would come in and Aaron can do it. And they were right every time. I can do it. I could do it. And I did do it. Every time. Awesome, right? Sounds great. Until I started to look closer, like I did recently. Why was I the go-to fill-in? This organization has their own people. How do I know? Because I have worked with those people. I was filling in where their team fell short. Why was I not on the team? Why am I just the fill-in? Why? Number one, I never asked for a permanent position, and that is on me. But the bigger part of that is this relationship grew out of that volunteer opportunity I mentioned, remember? In this organization's eyes, I have always been the help, not in a positive way. I have been the free help. I started out as volunteer labor, so anything on top of that was lucky for me, I guess, in their eyes. So I decided this is no longer the case, so I severed that working relationship. Not completely, but I bowed out of this assignment, which, as I have seen with others connected to this organization, means you are on the way out for good. And I am okay with that. I have enjoyed my connection with this company, but once I took a step back and realized how lopsided our relationship was, I decided I was finished. I have gotten significant financial benefit from this company over the 5-ish years, but then I realized, why am I not on your staff? You have a team surrounding you, and you recognize my value because you have come back for years, but you never thought of offering something bigger or more permanent. I'm out. As I said, this was within days of the other income loss, which sucks, but it is also what helped me recognize the power difference between us and that it was unacceptable. I'm grateful to help people and businesses who need it, but I am coming to help you, not the other way around. You need me. You reached out to me for help on your project, whatever it was, for whatever reason. Because each of these two relationships developed out of a power imbalance from the very beginning, it became difficult to break that dynamic except to sever the relationship completely. So in one case, the relationship was severed for me, and the other, I ended it. Ultimately, the positunity is, it doesn't matter who or what severs the relationship. If we can come together, great. If not, that's okay too, and we cut our losses. Here's the interesting thing about these relationships, though. It usually takes the strong, or whatever word you want to give the dominant force in the relationship, it takes them being willing to come to the middle or reach across. This is why in so many situations, like mine, it never happens. The power dynamic, the gap, just continues to become bigger and bigger until the only way to sever it is to sever it. The real problem is the dominant force often, and I don't want to say always, but often believes that for them to come to the middle, they must lose or give up something. In a symbiotic relationship, that is not the case. Everyone can mutually benefit, but the dominant force often doesn't even recognize It's repressing the smaller. It isn't that they have to give anything up. They just need to realize we were already equals to begin with. You came to me. You needed me. I needed or wanted the work, so I accepted. Thus, the symbiosis. If, however, it starts like this did, with a power dynamic imbalance, the relationship is parasitic, not symbiotic. In life and business and family and religion and you name it, life, we are all equals. We come to relationships as equals, but that may not stay the case. We came into this as equals. However, that power imbalance developed is not the issue. We came in as equals. So let's get back to that. If we can't find a way across the gap, it's okay to cut the losses. If you, dominant force, have to give something up, it's very likely because you took it, or I gave it. Otherwise, we would have stayed equals all along. Still, this applies in this business situation, which brought the discussion here. But as I just mentioned a minute ago, it really applies to any relationship. So I ask that we all think about this. The next time someone comes to us and says, here's what I am missing, money, time, whatever, you are not giving away anything. You are likely rectifying the inequity that was there already. You just didn't realize it as the dominant force in the relationship. I'm going to quickly use the example of marriage equality and then move on because I know it can be a touchy subject. But traditional marriage lost nothing with marriage equality. Your marriage was still as valid as it was before. It meant the same as it did before. Your marriage is, was, and always will be yours. All that happened in 2013 was the same benefits were extended to more people like me, people who had not been able to experience them. And when we talk about coming up with civil unions, that is just another version of separate but equal, and that is, I am sorry, never equal. Separate is never equal. I would like to posit that actual traditional marriage, biblical is what we're talking about here, was a transaction between individuals, families, even communities. So that is what I posit is traditional about marriage. And we haven't been following that tradition for quite some time. Whether it is about love or convenience or the financial benefit of the parties, marriage in any form is about two consenting adults coming together for the mutual benefit of each other. Obviously, this is an example of where a power imbalance can come in, but that has nothing to do with the transaction of why the marriage came about in the first place. So again, I ask you to push back, to ask yourself why. Why do I want this other person, company, whatever, not to have this thing or an equal voice or a part of the thing that I have? Again, I said I was going to quickly do that and move on. So I want to move on to something, again, that isn't necessarily a positunity on the surface, as much as a public service announcement or a plea for future positunities. It happened last week when I was donating blood. And this is a very personal issue for me. I was unable to donate for years, and that's a story and discussion for another time, but I was unable to give because of antiquated policies and my refusal to lie on the form and through the process. Finally, a couple of years ago, regulation caught up with science and reality, and I was finally able to give in good conscience without any conditions. Like I said, this is not where I want to go with this today, but I went to give blood on a Thursday after work. It had been particularly stressful, and especially during the week and especially during that day. I was so busy with work, I almost forgot the appointment completely. The short version, I was unable to calm down that day and be able to give blood. My blood pressure was too high, and I knew it was not coming down. Again, not the story. Although it did really upset me that day because this, again, as I said, became a deeply personal issue for me a few years ago. After not being able to donate for so many years, I found out that I am a universal donor, which makes it even more important that I donate. In any case, it caused a breakdown that day, but the breakdown was also connected to those outside stresses and my inability to chill. That said, and thank you to Mike, I calmed down and was able to schedule blood donation a couple of days later. Positunity? I guess, but that part would have happened anyway. What I want to talk about is the not-satunity that came up when I finished my double donation that Saturday. As I said, it was a Saturday, lightly snowing, and it was freezing. When I finished my blood donation, I went out and my car wouldn't start. I now know that the battery was corroded, and I cleaned it as well as checked to see whether a new battery was needed. Again, another story for another time. The not-satunity was that when I went inside to see if someone would help jumpstart my car, I was in between two vehicles and I had the cables in my car. I went inside and asked the receptionist. She was unwilling or unable to come out. I don't know. We went into the donation room and asked in there. No staff or patrons volunteered. Now, I'm going to posit here that the staff is not able to leave their position while at work, but there were several employees with nothing to do and none volunteered. I even pointed to my car outside and no donators volunteered that they were almost finished or could assist. The receptionist just shrugged and said sorry. Are you kidding me right now? Long story short, I had to call Mike, and luckily he was not working already, and we live literally 2 minutes away. I'm not kidding. I would have walked if it wasn't below freezing and I had just donated blood. He came to get me, and then I drove back to the donation center to jumpstart my own car. And I don't want to get into all of the details and what happened and how ridiculous the whole thing is, because that is not the positive opportunity material that I'm looking for. I'm going to say, sadly, it reminded me of a time 20 or so years ago at BYU. Yes, BYU, when I was in this exact same situation. Car dead, cables ready, not one student willing to help. At which university? I'm not going to say it again. I had to call my mom to drive 20 minutes to come help me because not one student at the aforementioned university had 5 minutes or less to help me. There in the Red Cross parking lot, post blood donation, I felt abandoned again by people I would have thought more than willing to jump in and help with something like this. Not one volunteer. So my positunity, if someone needs help jump-starting their car and they have the cables ready, unless you are on the way to the ER yourself, maybe take a minute to help. This is honestly only the second time in my life that I have had this ridiculous situation happen, but it is exactly that. If it has not happened to you, it might someday. And I would guess that you would appreciate anyone being willing to jump in, pun intended, and help. Honestly, besides frustrating me, it broke me a little more than even not giving blood a few days earlier. I want to believe that people are good and people want to help, but then there are moments like this that surprise and disappoint me. Please don't be that guy. If you can help, if it's going to take 5 minutes or less of your time, even 10 minutes, you can afford it. And karma will thank you later too. So with that, I want to shift, and we're going to talk about another positunity from this past week. So a few days ago, I went to the grocery store for a few quick things that I needed. It was going to be an armful. This will come in later. I gathered the things on the list, plus a couple of more, as is often the case when I am at the grocery store. Honestly, as I got to the front of the store, there were still a couple of items I remembered or added, mind you. The few items I had originally come in for and needed, I had. But these other couple of items I had come up with as I shopped. No, I decided this is enough, mostly because my arms were full and I thought I was going to drop something, and several of the items that I had were glass. As I passed the first open register and their customer was grabbing their bags, indicating to me this lane would be free right now, I turned down instead of continuing through the store and sort of dumped my items on the belt as I leaned over. As I started to stand things upright and place the additional items that I was death gripping down, the cashier said, as they often do, "Did you find everything you needed?" I responded, and then some, as usual. I decided to stop because you were open, and honestly, I thought I was going to drop something, if not everything. The cashier had already stopped paying attention to me at this point, so he turned and said, "Sorry, what?" I revised my response this time. My arms were full and I was going to drop something, so I guess I found everything. The bagger chimed in at this point. "That's the way you come to the store. No cart, no basket. Only what you can carry. It's cheaper and you don't get anything you don't need." I didn't have very many items, so the bagger excused himself quickly and the cashier gave me the total and I handed him a 20. This is where things get interesting because I don't normally pay in cash, ever. I happened to have a 20 and my total was under that, so I thought I may as well. My total was $19.35. The amount stood out, and I'm talking about it here, yes, because it's stuck in my mind. Also, because from the total of $19.35, I should have only gotten change, coins, back from the cashier. During all of this, actually right after I dropped my groceries on the belt, another customer came into line behind me, set his one item on the belt, and immediately got on his phone. I handed my money to the cashier and watched him type in 2000. I saw it on the screen. But this is where everything with the transaction froze. He typed it in and punched the enter button. I only assume that that's what he did because he pressed the last key with the confidence I pressed the button at the end of the sentence or anything else as punctuation. Nothing happened. He clicked a few more keys and again the emphatic enter, but nothing. And here is where the never pay in cash comes in, because I saw the card terminal in front of me looked as if it was ready for my card. And I say this because I have been with Mike paying in cash and seen this on the terminal, and the cashier needs to clear out their end, normally because they assumed it would be a card before the transaction can proceed. It looks like it's ready for me to pay with a card. Is it supposed to say tap or insert here? The cashier turned the terminal around and said, "Oh yeah, sorry." Guy behind me, still on his phone, but now there's another person behind him and the last half of the belt is full. I'm including this so you can get a reference of the time we have spent so far. The cashier was done scanning my groceries when the bagger left and the first gentleman walked in behind me. Yes, this is still only a matter of a minute or two, but the 2000 enter should have been an instant finale to my transaction. But now I've been here long enough for customers to fill the entire belt, and we're still trying to pay. I see him type in 2000 again. It pops up on the screen, but still the terminal in front of me is waiting for a card. Yes, it could be that it always says this, but the guy turned it around again. Finally, after an additional few keystrokes but no emphatic enters, the drawer slammed open and the receipt printed. The guy behind me finally looked up now, and the person behind him is looking a little annoyed, but not terribly. He's just thinking probably what I would be thinking. "You've been done since I got here. What's the problem?" The cashier grabbed my change and the receipt and handed it to me, said some form of "have a good day," and I grabbed it all from him, noticing a conspicuous dollar bill with the coins and receipt. Don't go back and don't try to remember the amount. It was $19.35. I should have gotten 65 cents back. Not wanting to delay things any further, I thought, whatever, and I started to walk away. I threw the change in my pocket and started to wad the receipt up, and there is this dollar bill in my hand that I cannot explain. It's $1. I don't want to delay the others behind me any longer than I already have, but my gut, besides knowing it is not my dollar, I've worked a register in retail and a bank, and I know what it means to be in balance. While most places have a tolerable acceptance limit for these kinds of things, I still know what it is like to wonder, where did I give or not give this money? Also, not my dollar. I think to myself and turn quickly to the cashier. I'm sorry, your till is going to be out of balance. Huh? He looked at me like a loony old sir, and if you follow me on Facebook, you'll understand that one. But I said, here, this is not my change. Again, the what look. Dude, my total was $19.35 and I gave you a $20. There is no way I should have $1. I don't know whether the change that he gave me was even correct. I just know I should not have $1. The kid stopped scanning, just looking confused at me. Listen, I don't want to hold you or anyone up. This is not my dollar. If your till is off at the end of the day, here you go. If it's not, consider it a tip, I said as I gave him the $1 and walked away. I should have given him a Positunity notice right then, but I wasn't in that mindset. I was in the not my dollar mindset. Get out of there so other people can do their business mindset. So I will have to take him a notice. I've tried a couple of times already to let him know, but I walked away a little bewildered that he didn't seem to get it. A little frustrated that it had taken so long to process a cash transaction, but also thinking, oh, you're going to be on the podcast, buddy. So here we are. I'm still going to try and Positunity notice him because, I want to grow the podcast, but also I want other people to think about these things and know when they get that notice or QR, it means you're probably going to be talked about in a nondescript way. If you are the cashier from Macy's, the grocery store, not department store, I would love a comment to hear how or what turned out from your end. This is the thing. Many times, the things we do never get a resolution, good or bad. We know what happened on our end, but not the other end. I'm interested in what happened on the other end. The first time I gave someone an extra $100 at the bank and they came back to give it to me, I can't tell you what that did for me. I had a spotless, within the tolerance, balancing record. And something like that, or this $1 transaction could be any number of transactions, so it's impossible to trace where the extra was given or kept. To have that person come back and say, I think you might be out of balance, so I could count my till and confirm. Oh my gosh, peace of mind. I know. In this instance, it was $1. Barely worth the trouble. Except I was out of balance. I knew that $1 was not mine. In the big scheme of things, it is minuscule, inconsequential, but how we show up for the smallest, most insignificant moments is how we show up for life. Period. Dominant force exerts power over weaker. If I hadn't noticed the total and walked away, that would be another story entirely. But because I knew there was no way I should have $1 in my hand, I couldn't just walk away with it. Don't just walk away when you know things are out of balance. Anything. Rectify them, or at least work to rectify them. This guy could have very easily been out of balance still. I don't know what change amount he gave me, but I put my end of the transaction back in balance. Thanks for joining. I appreciate anyone and everyone who listens. And I appreciate the comments. When I start getting some, I will share them. If you would rather remain anonymous, please still share, but let me know that you do not want the name shout out. Remember to follow on your favorite platform, including Spotify now, so you can get the new episode notifications. Like and follow us on Instagram, and since the relaunch on YouTube for the video version. You can also send an email to positunitynow@gmail.com, as well as visit online at the website positunity.net, .biz, or .org. Thanks for joining me. Life is a journey. Own yours. Be well.